Hi everyone. I'm going to do a quick video on torsion springs. Um, I'm sure everybody's familiar with them. They probably just don't know what they were called, but torsion springs are quite common. You can find them in clothespins. I mean, a clipboard uses a torsion spring in order to clamp down on the papers and such. A mousetrap is another example that would use a torsion spring. So let's take a look at that. So a torsion spring is made out of spring steel. In this case, a spring is usually made out of what they call music wire or piano wire. And the properties of the spring steel is it has the opportunity to deflect but also return to where it came from, unlike malleable materials like, for instance, lead. If you bent lead, it would stay exactly where you put it. But these are made out of spring steel. Um, so how you would use that? The first thing you need is you'll need some form of like a mandrel or an arbor that goes into the ID of the spring, and that's your control point right there. So now the spring can't move around on you as you apply pressure to the windings. You can see how that works. So as I collapse this, right, and I'm holding it under load, that's what they call the potential energy right there. And then I turn that into kinetic energy when I release that. Now, in terms of a mousetrap, I mean, that would be releasing all the energy at once and it would just snap like that, right? But you can also use them where you actually slowly release the energy by controlling the speed that the spring unwinds and goes back to its free state, which is right like this. So they're very useful, especially in dampening maybe motion or assisting. Let's say the motor only has X capabilities to move something. If you incorporate a spring that's under load and push in the direction of the spring motion, um, you can actually assist the motor too. So that's how torsion springs are used. And they come in the three different sizes available to us here in this class. And the strength of the spring is usually determined by the diameter of the music wire, um, and also the ID of the winding, or the mandrel that this was formed around. So a rule of thumb is the smaller the wire diameter, the less force it takes to collapse the spring. One other thing is you would never go against that. You wouldn't use a spring in this orientation because that's going against the natural winding of the spring, and it would create stress on the material and then it would fail on you. So you're always using a torsion spring in the direction that it was wound. So it's as if you were continuing to wind that. And every one of them needs its own mandrel. And the mandrel has to be sized so that when the spring is actuated, the ID of the spring is going to collapse slightly. So if your mandrel, in this case the shaft, is oversized, as you collapse the spring, it's going to bind on there, and then you're going to create stresses in the spring itself at certain points when it freezes up. So you have to be mindful of that. We got them all the way down to really small wire diameter like this, and again, they're really useful. Um, Talking about stored energy, I made up this little model right here. Um, this kind of depicts what a garage door is like. So, for instance, you have a 300-pound garage door, and how is it that a child of 100 pounds can actually lift that door up without any other assist? Well, how that happens is when you bring the garage door down to a closed position, what you're doing is you're winding a torsion spring along an axle or a shaft like this. So now you're creating all this stored energy in the spring, and when it comes time to lift that garage door, that all that tension that you've created by winding that spring is released slowly, and that's where the garage door, the spring assists in lifting the garage door. So that's why a child can lift a 300-pound door by himself. So there's a great example right there of torsion springs and how they can be used for you. So when you look at this video and hopefully investigate the model that I've made, here's a sample of a spring at rest, and then bringing that to load, you can actually see the spring wind around that mandrel that's in the black Delrin piece right there. So that's kind of sums it up on how to what a torsion spring is and how to use them. They're very handy. Just you proceed with caution using them, because once you load a spring up and it fires off, your fingers are in the way. Also, always wear your safety glasses, because sometimes a spring will get away from you and you just don't know where it'll end up. So hopefully that helps.